Gavel slammed once, echoing through the military courtroom. She sat there, accused of stolen valor, her uniform stripped of recognition, her medals dismissed as cheap replicas. The prosecution smiled confidently, certain they would expose her as nothing more than a fraud. But what nobody in that room knew was that the case was about to take a turn no one expected, because the truth wasn't buried in her testimony or even in her files. The truth was walking down a hallway in the Pentagon, heading straight for this courtroom. The military tribunal chamber at Fort Belvoir smelled faintly of old wood and a lingering scent of Virginia rain. A late autumn storm had rolled through the Washington suburbs, but inside the chamber was stifling. Major Elena Santos sat alone at the defense table, her hands resting calmly in her lap. Though her wrists bore faint white scars that no one had noticed, she looked out of place, dressed in standard Army service uniform, but stripped of all insignia. Her ribbons removed, her decorations confiscated as evidence. Across from her, Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell, the prosecutor, was already smiling like a man who'd won before the game even started. His stack of files was neatly arranged, full of service records and personnel rosters meant to prove one thing. Elena Santos had never been who she claimed to be. Another faker, someone muttered in the gallery, just loud enough for her to hear. Pretending she was in special operations. Pathetic. Elena didn't react. She had learned long ago that silence was sharper than protest. Brigadier General Thompson, the presiding judge, tapped his pen against the docket and cleared his throat. This tribunal is now in session. The case of United States versus Major Elena Santos. Charges: impersonating a Green Beret, falsifying military records, and fraudulent display of commendations, including the Distinguished Service Cross. The words hung heavy in the air. Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell rose, his voice smooth and confident. Your Honor, this is a simple case. The accused has been attending veteran events claiming service in special operations, even hinting at classified missions. She has appeared in photographs with medals she did not earn. She has attempted to pass herself off as something she is not, a warrior. The evidence will show her service was 4 years of intelligence analysis work, nothing more. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Elena sat motionless, her eyes fixed on the grain of the table in front of her. The first witness, a retired Army Ranger, swore in and pointed directly at her. She told us she was there. Syria, 2018. She described the operation like she was part of it. Impossible. We all know no woman has ever been part of those missions. Objection. Her defense counsel muttered half-heartedly, but even he sounded like he didn't believe in her case. Captain Rodriguez was young, nervous, probably handed this defense as an assignment rather than a choice. Overruled. Continue. Piece by piece, the prosecution laid its case like bricks in a wall. Her official file projected on the big screen. Elena Santos, enlisted 2014, discharged 2018, intelligence analyst. No combat tours. No special warfare training. No commendations beyond the Army Commendation Medal. The file looked damning. It was damning. Mitchell held up a photograph of Elena standing at a small veteran event, the Distinguished Service Cross gleaming on her jacket. This medal, he said triumphantly, is a replica available online for $89. She wore it in public to gain credibility she does not deserve. The gallery shifted with disgust. Some shook their heads. Others whispered words like disgrace and fraud. Through it all, Elena sat perfectly still. The storm outside raged harder, thunder cracking like artillery fire. Finally, General Thompson leaned forward. Major Santos, do you have anything to say in your defense? The room turned to her. Elena lifted her eyes, steady, controlled. She spoke only once, her voice even. My service record speaks for itself. Laughter broke out in the gallery, a cruel, bitter sound. Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell smirked, sensing victory was his. But then the door at the back of the courtroom opened, not gently. Decisively two men in suits entered, their earpieces visible under the harsh lights. Secret Service. The murmur stopped instantly to a third man followed them in, older, steady, the kind of presence that silenced a room without speaking. Secretary of Defense James Harrison had just walked into the courtroom. The storm outside went quiet for one impossible moment, as if the whole world was holding its breath. "Mr. Secretary," General Thompson began, his voice cracking as he tried to recover his composure. "General," Harrison interrupted, his tone calm but absolute. "Remain seated." The general obeyed without hesitation, his face pale. The entire gallery, soldiers, Marines, retirees, CID agents, even Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell, froze where they stood. Elena did not move either. But for the first time since the proceedings began, her gaze shifted from the table to the man approaching the bench. Secretary Harrison turned, his sharp gaze falling on Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell. "This trial, explain it to me." Mitchell swallowed, his earlier confidence faltering but not extinguished. "Mr. Secretary, the accused Major Santos has been parading false claims of service. She's been presenting herself as special forces, wearing decorations she never earned, dishonoring those who did. The evidence is overwhelming." Harrison listened silently, then looked back at Elena. She met his eyes without flinching. "Major Santos," he said, his voice softer now, but carrying across the silent chamber. "Do you know why I'm here?" "No, sir," she replied evenly. The secretary reached into his coat pocket and produced a leather-covered case, weathered but unmistakable. He set it on the judge's desk and opened it, revealing a Distinguished Service Cross. But not just any DSC. This one carried a specific engraving, a date, and a classified operational code. The gallery erupted into whispers. Thompson pounded his gavel. "Silence. This," Harrison said, his voice firm again, "is Major Santos's medal, awarded in a secure ceremony attended only by myself, General Morrison, and 2 operators whose names will never appear on any roster. It was presented for her actions during an operation in Syria that saved not just an intelligence asset, but 47 civilians caught in crossfire." Gasps rippled through the room. Lieutenant Colonel Mitchell blinked, visibly struggling. "Mr. Secretary, with all due respect, no woman has ever..." "Stop." A single word cut sharper than any gavel. Harrison stepped closer to Mitchell, his presence towering. "That statement, Colonel, is precisely why Major Santos' service was classified. She did not claim to be Special Forces. She never once said those words. Others made the assumption. She served in a program so sensitive that even most flag officers never knew existed." He turned to the gallery, his voice rising with restrained force. "And now, because of arrogance and ignorance, she has been dragged into this courtroom, accused of being a fraud for telling a truth she was ordered never to reveal." Silence. The storm outside had returned, rain slamming against the windows like applause no one dared to give. Elena sat still, her breathing controlled, but for the first time, her hands clenched into fists on the table. General Thompson leaned forward, his voice unsteady. "Mr. Secretary, you're saying these charges are..." "Dismissed," Harrison said flatly, "effective immediately. This tribunal is over." He turned back to Elena, his tone softened again, private, even as the entire room listened. "Major, you've carried a burden this country asked you bear, and you did it with honor. I regret that it came to this. You deserve more than secrecy. You deserve recognition." Her lips parted slightly as if to speak, but she said nothing. The moment was too heavy, too sharp. Behind them, Mitchell tried one last protest. "But, sir," her service record was sanitized, scrubbed, sealed. "Do you think classified programs leave their operators exposed in public files?" The secretary's eyes burned into him. "Colonel Mitchell, let me be clear. If I hear of you or anyone else questioning her honor again, your career will end before the ink dries on your next report." Mitchell sank back into his seat, pale and silent. Harrison gestured toward Elena's defense counsel, who looked like he might faint from shock. "Captain Rodriguez, you'll be provided with a corrected record for your client within the hour. You'll find it far more complete than the one you've been shown here." He turned toward General Thompson. "Seal this case. Every word, every file, every transcript. No further mention without my direct authorization." "Yes, Mr. Secretary," Thompson said quickly. Harrison looked back to Elena one last time, his voice quiet. "You are not alone anymore, Major. Not after today." With that, He closed the metal case, tucked it back into his coat, and turned for the door. The Secret Service moved in perfect precision, clearing his path. The gallery remained frozen, the air electric with disbelief. No one spoke. No one moved as the secretary stepped out into the storm. Lightning illuminated the chamber, and for the first time, Elena allowed herself the faintest of smiles. The tribunal chamber was empty now, the gavel's final echo long gone, yet the silence still weighed heavy. Elena sat alone at the defense table, staring at the wood grain as if the answer to everything lay hidden in the lines. Captain Rodriguez stood awkwardly nearby, shuffling papers he no longer needed. "Major," he began softly, "I don't understand any of this. A moment ago, they were ready to strip you of dignity and throw you in prison. Now the Secretary defends himself." He stopped, searching for words. "What are you?" Elena raised her eyes to him for the first time all day. Her voice was quiet but firm. "I'm a soldier who followed orders." "That's all." "Orders." Rodriguez pressed. "Orders to what? Pretend? Hide." Before Elena could respond, the heavy doors opened again. General Thompson re-entered, his composure partly restored, followed by two men in dark suits and a woman in army uniform whose ribbons alone could silence a room. General Patricia Hayes, Director of Army Special Programs. "Major Santos," General Hayes said, her tone clipped but not unkind. "You'll come with us." Elena rose without hesitation. She didn't look surprised, almost as though she'd been waiting for this. They led her through corridors deep into the secure wing of the base, far from the tribunal chamber, until they reached a windowless conference room humming with electronic countermeasures. Hayes gestured for her to sit. On the table before her was a folder stamped with the words "Nightfall," compartmented. Hayes opened it, revealing photographs, dusty alleyways in Damascus, satellite images of compounds, blurred shot of armed men, and then a grainy still frame of Elena herself, clad in nondescript local clothes, an M4 rifle slung low, her face half-shadowed but unmistakable. Rodriguez stared, his jaw slack. That's you." Elena remained silent. Hayes slid another photo forward. A burning convoy. In the foreground, several civilians huddled behind an overturned truck. And there was Elena again, crouched low, hand raised, signaling them to move. "These were never meant to see daylight," Hayes said, her voice steady. "But after today, daylight is precisely where this has landed us." Hayes folded her hands. "Officially, Major Elena Santos served 4 years in intelligence analysis. Unremarkable. In truth, she was one of 12 women selected for a classified operational unit. Not special forces, not Rangers, not Delta. Something different. We called it Project Artemis." "Like the goddess," Rodriguez said quietly, "the goddess of the hunt." It fit. Their missions required them to move where men could not, to blend in, to operate in silence where brute force would fail. They trained to special forces standards higher in some cases. Rodriguez looked at Elena, struggling to process. "So when they accused you, when they mocked you in court, you couldn't defend yourself." Elena's lips curled into the faintest trace of a smile, though her eyes stayed hard. "I was ordered never to." For the first time, Rodriguez understood the depth of her silence. It hadn't been weakness. It had been discipline. Obedience. Strength. Hayes closed the folder. "Now the secretary himself has blown the cover. The truth is no longer containable." Thompson shifted uncomfortably. "So what happens now?" Hayes's eyes settled on Elena. "That depends on her. The country can no longer deny what she and others like her accomplished. The question is, will she accept the recognition she was once denied, knowing it will change everything?" The room fell into silence, the weight of the choice pressing down like a storm about to break. Elena exhaled slowly. For the first time since stepping into the tribunal, her voice carried more than calm. It carried resolve. "Recognition isn't for me," she said quietly. "It's for the ones who never came home. If their stories remain erased, then none of this means anything." Hayes's expression softened just slightly. "Then maybe it's time we let the world know." 6 months later, Elena Santos stood at the podium in the Pentagon briefing room. The distinguished service crossed gleaming, on her uniform. Behind her, photographs of 12 women, the complete roster Project Artemis, were displayed on a large screen. "We never asked to be hidden," she said to the assembled crowd of reporters and military officials. "We asked to serve." Today, that service is no longer a secret. She paused, her gaze unwavering. The real heroes are the ones who never came home. Tonight, remember their sacrifice and know that they existed. They bled, they gave everything, and they deserve to be remembered. As she stepped back, Secretary Harrison approached the microphone. "Welcome home, Major," he said softly, words meant for her, but heard by the world. What Elena Santos had endured in that courtroom, the accusations, the humiliation, the near destruction of her reputation, had become the catalyst for revealing one of the military's most closely guarded secrets. Sometimes the truth doesn't emerge through official channels or planned announcements. Sometimes it takes a false accusation to reveal a hidden hero.